Ryan Seacrest here. When you have a busy schedule, it's important to maximize your downtime. One of the best ways to do that is by going to ChumbaCasino.com. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino games like spin slots, bingo, and solitaire that you can play for free for a chance to redeem some serious prizes. So hop on to ChumbaCasino.com now and live the Chumba life. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome in to Two Guys, One Pod, Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Rick Porter, joined by my co-host, as always, Justin, Chev 90, the dude. You ready to get into these top 5 running backs? We teased it out. We had 2 whole episodes, kind of like we did with the quarterbacks just now.
Speaking of teases, I thought you were finally going to acknowledge me by my God-given title. I thought after all this time, I had gotten one of my best friends to acknowledge me by the title that I am acknowledged by universally, cosmically, in the fantasy verse. And you had the opportunity and you just said, thought you had one, didn't you, bud? That's fine. That's fine. I get it. I understand it now. All right. So, not to cut you off, but yes, I will tell the people I am the legendary ball knower and all those other names that Rick had waxed so eloquently before he just skated right over the most important one. So, continue as you were, my friend.
I'm not going to lie. I've had that loaded for weeks. I was like,
I got right in front of the mic. I was about to let out the most excited yell that you could imagine. And you, yeah. So it's probably good. It probably wouldn't have been good for the podcast if I just screamed as loud as I could, or, my children who would have no idea what's going on. So yeah, we're going to talk about some running backs today. Hero RB is back. Shout out to 2010. And I'm pretty excited about this. So, as I said before, I cut you off because I got a little too excited. But you can continue.
Thank you. We can go ahead and just get right into it. All these running backs have a little bit extra color to the picture, as you like to say, as I like to say. But we can kick it off with RB5. Devon Achane. He goes for 299.9 fantasy points, good enough for 17.6 points per game. He played in 17 games, 87 targets. There we go. 78 receptions, 592 yards, 6 touchdowns, 203 rushing attempts, 907 rushing yards, 9 rushing touchdowns, 9 RB1 weeks, 3 RB2 weeks, 3 RB3 weeks, and 2 weeks outside of the top 36. Devon Achane, is this just another season like we have done for a couple of different players now connected to Tua Tagovailoa, where we just say, it was good, but, we're going to give him a pass of what could, because I think that people were drafting him with what could be RB1 type upside. And when Tua is going to miss 6 games or however many it was, it just takes the top off of what Devon Achane can do, verifiably so. So how do you feel about Devon Achane this year?
With Tua in the lineup, he averaged almost 24 points per game this year. So RB1 with Tua is in the range of outcomes, in my opinion. Now, we can't assume injury, although he is 5'9", 190 pounds or whatever he is. So he's not a bigger back. I mean, he handled 203 carries this year, 281 total opportunities, and turned that into almost 1,500 yards from scrimmage. So I think that this is an elite ceiling with Tua. It's just, are we going to have Tua? Is the biggest question as to whether or not Devon Achane is one of the upper crust omega level talents at the position. I don't think there's any question, rather. I think that the question lies with his quarterback.
I've heard of teams being on a treadmill. I think most of them reference like a quarterback treadmill. By the situation that the Dolphins have put themselves in, I think that they have ordered the treadmill themselves. They have unboxed it. They have assembled it. They have got it going at a speed fast enough where it would be uncomfortable to get off. You've assembled a great team. Tyreek Hill is still a great wide receiver, I think. I think Jalen Waddle is a great wide receiver. I think that Devon Achane is a fantastic running back. You obviously have a good enough line to protect Tua for 70% of the season-ish, and you have dedicated a whole bunch of money to Tua being your guy. All of that is the treadmill when you consider that your guy can go out, and he has gone out for extended periods of time, 2 out of the last 3 seasons, and because the quarterback position is so much between the ears, you've hamstrung yourself because you can't go get a Joe Flacco. You can't go get a Carson Wentz. You can't go get anybody else on the open market that is halfway decent. You can't go get a Sam Darnold, that's for damn sure, that is going to in any way hinder his confidence or make him press and put himself in unsafe situations. So you have this constant fear of losing your $64 million quarterback. He's the second highest paid behind Trevor Lawrence now, I believe. You have this constant fear, and you also can't back him up adequately. So all of his offensive options, to include this guy who could be RB1, Tyreek Hill, who was on a 2,000-yard season pace last year until the last 3 games. You can't feel any kind of safe about those options because you don't know what is behind Tua ever.
Right. And that's the most important point. The thing that I just wanted to highlight was the fact that like we can't discount what Devon Achane actually represents from a production standpoint. I mean, that 17.6 points per game is weighed down heavily by those 6 games that we mentioned that Tua missed, right? And the games that he played, Devon Achane was incredible. I mean, you know, I'm a guy that has a lot of Devon Achane in different dynasty leagues, and it felt great when Tua was in the lineup, and then when he wasn't in the lineup, it was like you just had a zero, just a walking zero. So it's wild, absolutely wild, the swings of a quarterback that neither one of us believe is really, really good, but apparently this offense just cannot function with anybody else besides Tua in the lineup.
Well, I am not of the opinion that Tua makes the wheel turn. I think Tua is a top 15 quarterback in the league, and that's what the offense needs. And I think you can get that from multiple different quarterbacks. But like I said, you just don't know when you're not going to have just top half. That's all you need is top half to run this offense. Get the ball to the fastest guy in the NFL and get the ball to one of the most dynamic playmakers in the NFL. That's your job as Tua Tagovailoa, and he is good enough to do that. You just need a quarterback good enough. Skylar Thompson and Huntley are not good enough to do that. Get a quarterback get a backup that is good enough to do that, and I will draft Devon Achane as a top 4 running back this year.
I believe it. I mean, I think that's a great point. I find myself really, really just having a little pause, a little trepidation because of the fact that you don't know what's going to happen with Tua. But I mean, that's the nature of the beast. That's what you're signing up for. So, do they address the position in the draft with bringing in someone that's a bit more capable of a backup? We will see. But for me, I think that Devon, to answer your original question, I feel like I've danced around it I'm definitively saying that Devon Achane has RB1 overall upside as long as Tua is in the lineup. So yes, with a caveat.
I am definitively saying that if this condition is met, then yes. But yeah, I agree too. I think that if Tua Tagovailoa plays a full season, then Devon. Wait, yes, if they both play full seasons, I think Devon Achane is RB1. Period. End of sentence. The question is health for them both.
Beautiful. All right. Correct. I agree.
All right, moving on. We've got Derrick Henry at running back 4. Derrick Henry, 336 total fantasy points, 19.7 points per game, all 17 games played. 22 targets, 19 receptions, 193 receiving yards, almost 10 yards per reception for Derrick Henry. He has 2 receiving touchdowns, 325 rushing attempts, 1,921 rushing yards.
Hello, it is Ryan, and we could all use an extra bright spot in our day, couldn't we? Just to make up for things like sitting in traffic, doing the dishes, counting your steps, all the mundane stuff. That is why I'm such a big fan of Chumba Casino. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere with daily bonuses. That should brighten your day a little. Actually, a lot. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com. That's ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
1,921 rushing yards. Good night. 16 rushing touchdowns, 9 RB1 weeks, 6 RB2 weeks, 2 RB3 weeks, no weeks outside of the top 36. In fact, no other running back that we talk about for the rest of this episode is going to ever have a week outside the top 36. Fantastic year for running backs all around. What was your take on Derrick Henry this season? And what's your outlook for 2025?
I mean, when we're talking about outliers, there is the 2 of the guys on this list are just, the rest of the guys on this list, I was going to say 2, but like the guys that that are remaining for us to discuss are just definitive outliers. Derrick Henry is a definitive outlier. He's the first player to have his age 30 season or older go over 2,000 yards from scrimmage in a season. And I think that this is, I say perfect back, perfect system. That's something that if you've listened to the podcast for a while, you'll hear us trying to identify, because there's pockets every single year where you can find value. Derrick Henry and Saquon were the values this year. Perfect back, perfect system. He's with Lamar. He's never going to face the types of things that he faced in Tennessee as long as he is in a Ravens uniform. So I'm extremely bullish. I mean, as crazy as this sounds, this might not be the ceiling outcome for Derrick Henry. We could get somewhere along the lines of a 20 touchdown season and another 1,800 yards. I mean, we're talking about a guy who's going to finish his career as a first ballot Hall of Famer when he hangs the cleats up. So we have to deal in the actual, but what is possible with a guy like this is almost unfathomable. So 1,900 yards, 16 touchdowns, 9 RB1 weeks. He fades during the worst part of the season. And during the fantasy playoffs, he doesn't really help you in weeks 14 and 15. So, but he got you to the fantasy playoffs. I mean, this was a guy who was considered a league winner across the board with almost nothing to offer in the receiving game besides 2 receiving touchdowns. So I think that we're going to be in for another top 5 to 7 season because of the ecosystem that he is in. And that offensive line that lost 3 starters that we had question marks about early on in the season gelled pretty well. They're set to lose Ronnie Stanley in free agency. However, they draft really well in the trenches. So I'm assuming that they'll be able to find a young man and develop him into a startable piece that's not going to just stop this operation. So I feel like he's going to be drafted again inside the top 6 or 7 running backs. A little bit lower if you're in PPR because he doesn't offer any pass catching upside, and he'll be right back here next year, assuming health.
Agreed. I will add that to me, he feels like the running back in the top 10 that has the least range. Like, I think 5 is probably ceiling, or 4, excuse me, is ceiling, and like 7 is floor. Whereas James Cook comes in with 16 rushing touchdowns, and he could be, if he gets 4 again, like he got the first 2 years of his career, 4 total touchdowns, excuse me, he could easily be RB16. Or he could repeat and be at RB10 to 8, somewhere around in there. Alvin Kamara at RB11. I think that in a halfway decent offensive system playing 17 games, he can finish in 8, or in a terrible offense, he could finish at 16. I just feel like there's less of a range. And you could continue on down. Devon Achane, we just talked about him. Like, he finished at 5 this year. And I think that like we talked about, we waxed eloquent about his ceiling could be RB1. I think that Derrick Henry it's a much smaller range, and it's a much higher floor to me. But we can move on because I agree with the rest of what you said. Bijan Robinson comes in at RB3. He has 341.7 fantasy points on the year, 20.1 points per game, plays all 17 games, 72 targets, 61 receptions, 431 receiving yards, 1 receiving touchdown, 304 rushing attempts, 1,456 rushing yards, 14 rushing touchdowns, 10 RB1 weeks, 4 RB2 weeks, 3 RB3 weeks. I've said it before, and I'll say it again this offseason. This was the Bijan that Atlanta drafted, especially after, I want to say, the first Buccaneers game. He went on a streak of whereas like 3 of 5 games he had multi-touchdown games, and he's like, hey, I'm that dude. And this was that kind of season. It's overshadowed by Derrick Henry having 1,900 yards and Jahmyr Gibbs finishing as the overall number 1, and Saquon Barkley having, he could have had, 2,000 yards on the ground. Or he could have had the rushing record. He had 2,005 yards on the ground. But I think it's the production that Bijan was responsible for in an offense that could not work with Kirk Cousins. It's going to be overlooked this offseason. I think going as RB3 to 5 is where he's going to land, and I'll be taking him there every time.
This is a dynasty RB1 for me, and I won't take any arguments to the contrary. I mean, you saw the uptick in usage. You saw exactly 60 less touches for Tyler Algier that all directly went to Bijan Robinson, and he delivered on this. 61 receptions, 430 yards. I think there's room to even go up from there on only 72 targets. So he gave you Rachaad White level efficiency, and he also gives you an incredible rushing floor. I mean, 1,400 yards and 14 touchdowns, and it feels like we got going later in the season. Like, again, you lamented the Bucks. Like, after the first Bucks game, we went bam, 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 bam. 3 of 5 multi-touchdown games. I am absolutely in love with Bijan Robinson and his current draft status, draft position. People are taking Jahmyr Gibbs at number 3. No, not me. Give me this guy. There's no competition for him. You and I bet Breece Hall versus Bijan at the beginning of the season, and I had to eat a bunch of crow because this guy was incredible. I mean, and it's looking like this is something that's going to be extremely sustainable because of the fact that now they got Captain Durag at the helm, who can do all the things that Zach Robinson wants to do in that Sean McVay West Coast styled offense with the wide zones and the out of the pistol and being able to do the pivots and the just getting the run game activated by a mobile quarterback. I think that this is kind of a median outcome for Bijan, and he could get up there with the big boys and give you a 1,600 or a 1,700 yard rushing performance or flirt with 20 touchdowns. So I'm extremely bullish on Bijan Robinson. How do you feel about that?
About you being bullish about Bijan, or how do I feel about Bijan?
Case for Bijan that this is more of a median outcome than it is a ceiling outcome.
I agree. And just to correct my stats there, because I was off. It was the week after Tampa Bay. It started off with the week against Carolina. He goes 2 touchdowns, 1 touchdown, 0-0, and then 2 touchdowns. So it's 2 out of 5. They had multi-touchdown games. But then I remember why I thought 3 was the number. He finished the year with back-to-back-to-back games in 16, 17, and 18 with multi-touchdown games. So after the bye was whenever was it directly after the bye, or I didn't think he started 5 games or 6 games. Did Penix start 6 games?
Penix started the week after the Raiders game, so week 16. So Kirk Cousins gets benched after that Raiders game where they just can't trust him to throw the ball at all. That's when Penix started starting. So he started 16, 17, 18.
So the 3 games that he started, Bijan Robinson had multi-touchdown games. Now, that's insane. That's an insane correlation. I don't think that that's causation, but it's insane. If I had $1 for every time Bijan has scored 2 touchdowns with a rookie quarterback, I'd have $3, which isn't that many, but it's weird that it happened 3 times. Like, I am with you that this is a median outcome, and I think this is another guy with legitimate odds to finish as RB1 on the 2025 season.
Yeah. No, I mean, I love it. I think that this is my early dark horse candidate, and it's not really that dark horse. Out of these top 5, like I would say that he probably has the best chance to finish as the 2025 RB1.
Agreed. RB2 technically on the season because we're taking into account week 18 on the season. 355 total fantasy points for Saquon Barkley, 22.2 points per game, 16 games, 43 targets, 33 receptions for 278 yards, 2 receiving touchdowns, 345 rushing attempts for 2,005 yards, 13 rushing touchdowns, 10 RB1 weeks, 2 RB2 weeks, 4 RB3 weeks. In the offseason, the lament about Saquon Barkley going to the Eagles was, he's going to cede so many rushing touchdowns to the tush push and Jalen Hurts in that offensive line, and he did.
How to have fun anytime, anywhere. Step 1, go to ChumbaCasino.com.
ChumbaCasino.com. Got it.
Step 2, collect your welcome bonus.
Come to Papa welcome bonus.
Step 3, play hundreds of casino-style games for free.
That's a lot of games, all for free?
Step 4, unleash your excitement.
Chumba Casino has been delivering thrills for over a decade. So claim your free welcome bonus now and live the Chumba life. Visit ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
He verifiably did. However, what no one apparently took into account was that Saquon Barkley is the best running back in the NFL, maybe next to Christian McCaffrey when he's healthy.
I mean,
period. That bore itself out.
From a fantasy perspective, you still have to take Christian McCaffrey's 2017 season or 2018 season.
I think it was 19, but
I believe
I can check that.
18, 19 were the prime years of Christian McCaffrey. Like, I mean, last year, 2023, he was incredible. So, but it's because of the pass catching upside. If you're talking about pure rushing upside, I mean, this is just a masterpiece. You get the perfect back and the perfect system, and you finally get to see what Saquon can do when there's not 9 people in the box and Daniel Jones at the helm. And this is beautiful. And if they could figure out a way to get him involved in the passing game, I mean, we're talking about a guy who at one point in time was second all time in rookie receptions for a running back. So he has a 90 catch season under his belt. If we can figure out a way to get him back involved in the passing game, which there's just not very much volume to be had. I mean, 43 targets out of Jalen Hurts' 361 attempts. This is not the highest level of fantasy production that we could get from a guy like this, because he does have Christian McCaffrey level pass catching chops. So the 2,000 yards, I don't think that we'll see that again just because we've only seen 9 of those seasons now in NFL history. But we could get an uptick in passing volume, and that could get us right back here. And this is such a beautiful thing for me because Saquon's been one of my favorite players for years, full stop. Everyone who's ever talked to me knows this. I mean, he's in all honesty, he's probably my favorite running back of all time. Like I have several shirts with his likeness on it. So yeah, this is super exciting for me going into he just turned 28 years old on the day of the Super Bowl. And I don't think that we're seeing the decline. We won't see the decline barring traumatic injury. Gonna knock on wood right now so we can just continue to see this guy in this system, and it's just absolutely beautiful.
I am going to say this now, and this can be our first bet of the 2025 season. Has nothing to do with fantasy. I think the Eagles are going to make a play to go undefeated next year, and
Oh wow.
the defense is so good. They didn't beat the Chiefs. They destroyed the Chiefs, and they didn't even play the second half. They finished the game up whatever it was, 3 scores, and they did not try the second half. They brought zero pressure. They blitzed 0 times in the Super Bowl against a team that was a favorite against them, and they crushed them. Their secondary is fantastic. Their defensive line can get pressure without blitzing. Their quarterback can play mistake-free football and lead a team and captain a team to victories. I think that Jalen Hurts gets sold short quite a bit, and I'm guilty of it, especially in the regular season. In losses, he wears the losses in the media, and he is a legitimate captain of the football team. A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith on the outside, the dogs in the trenches, and Saquon Barkley point out the weakness of this team to me. I don't see it took them a second to get their defense rocking and rolling, but once they did, they didn't look back, and it wasn't close. People want to point to the Commanders as a close-ish game, the fumbles being the reason. Yeah, the fumbles obviously didn't help you, but a fantastic defense does that. They cause fumbles. They make big plays in big moments. It happens. I think this is going to be – it could be. It depends on injuries, and I don't know what everybody's contract situation looks like on the defensive side, but I don't really care for the Eagles either, and I think that they have a legitimate shot to go 17-0 next season.
Well, that's really, really difficult. I mean, they just played 20 games, and so that makes me believe that they're at some point or another fatigue becomes a factor, and that's just really, really difficult to do. I could very easily see them starting 10-0, 11-0, but that's really hard to sustain. And while they do have the horses to do it, I don't know that they're going to put any more emphasis on chasing a record. I mean, we've already seen that they had a chance to bring a record to the city of Philadelphia to go into Canton, and they chose not to do it. So that would be my pushback, is that they don't seem like they're going to ever go out of their way to chase something like that.
The only pushback I would have on that is those decisions were made by a coach who probably, until they won the first playoff game, I'm not sure that he felt the most secure as a coach. Do
Man,
you?
that guy is
I think there's legitimate questions about Nick Sirianni's employment heading into the
I think that those
playoffs.
questions were coming from outside of the organization and not within, and that's why you saw him behave that way, because if he actually thought that he was in danger, he might be that brazen, but probably not, in my opinion. So I think that they're going to, if they stay healthy, yeah, they're going to beat piss down a lot of people's legs because they're just that good. And I think that given the opportunity to choose to stay healthy or chase a record, we've seen them already. We've turned that opportunity down. So I don't know that if we get into them locking up the division early, I don't know that they're going to continue that pursuit of high level historical achievement.
I completely understand that. And if they choose to do that, whatever, it's a smart thing to do. But I was just thinking about it on my drive home, like maybe 2 weeks after the Super Bowl. I was like, what is the weakness on this team? Just show me the weakness. There are maybe not, so some parts aren't as good as others, maybe, but it seems like they just have studs at every position. And I can't remember a team being like that in recent memory. Like you had Kansas City have an awesome offense, and you had the Broncos the year they actually won it have an awesome defense, but I don't remember a team having this few holes. And it's not just they're like a complete team. They're a complete team, and every position that they're complete at is great. It's the best offensive line in football. It's the best running back in football right now. It's a top 10 wide receiver, and by the way, probably a top 15 wide receiver across the field from him. It's a good tight end. It's a great quarterback. It's probably the top 5 ranked defense, but I'm not sure how they're not one after the Super Bowl. So I just don't see the weakness outside of them actively choosing to rest guys. I don't see how they lose games next year. But we can move on. We've spoken enough about the Eagles. Jahmyr Gibbs finishes the year as RB1, 362.9 total points, 21.3 points per game. He plays all 17 games. Another guy that we were worried about in Jahmyr Gibbs, same as we were with Devon Achane, same draft class, a lighter running back under 200 pounds going into his combine. That played 17 games this year, 63 targets, 52 receptions for 517 yards, 4 receiving touchdowns, 250 rushing attempts, 1,412 rushing yards, 16 rushing touchdowns. He finishes the year with 10 RB1 weeks, 6 RB2 weeks, and 1 RB3 week. This is why I was irritated partly with Jared Goff. And it can also be, the same argument can be applied a little bit to Jahmyr Gibbs. The team was so good that they didn't have to utilize him primarily. As soon as they started utilizing him primarily, he paced for RB1 across the weeks without David Montgomery by a lot. And when David Montgomery is in the lineup, he's still an RB1.
Hello, it is Ryan, and we could all use an extra bright spot in our day, couldn't we? Just to make up for things like sitting in traffic, doing the dishes, counting your steps, all the mundane stuff. That is why I'm such a big fan of Chumba Casino. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere with daily bonuses. That should brighten your day a little. Actually, a lot. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com. That's ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
He still gets RB1 usage. He still has RB1 production. It's just not the ceiling that we know could be there. If you drafted Jahmyr Gibbs as the first running back off the board over Saquon, over Derrick Henry, over Devon Achane, over Bijan Robinson, I wouldn't have fought you for it.
The only thing that's stopping us from getting, and I've said this several times, this is throwing back to the days of yesteryear. This is Thomas Jones and Jamal Charles, 2 really good running backs that are going to limit the upside of the other. I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs comes out the minute David Montgomery gets hurt, and he's just a league winner. I think we even said it on the show. It's like, oh yeah, Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be the thing that makes the difference, the most difference in the fantasy playoffs this year. And you just kind of resigned yourself to that, because this is a truly singular talent when it comes to his athletic ability and his ability to play the position. He's not just fast. He's extremely elusive. He's got great contact balance. Beyond the contact balance, he's got incredible vision. He's got incredible hands. And then he gets into the open field, and it's just 75-yard touchdown runs where he's turning into Sonic memes. So I can't, as much as we're gonna say all of these positive things about him, I think it is incorrect to make him the RB1 overall by ADP going into next year because they just extended David Montgomery.
Well, the rebuttal to that is that this is the second year that David Montgomery has missed significant time. In the time that he has missed, Jahmyr Gibbs has RB1. So you have this added turbo, if you will, where he becomes RB1 and he will be utilized as the RB1 of the league if David Montgomery goes out. And to illustrate that, we talked about this last few minutes of when David Montgomery went out. He goes down in week 15. Starting in week 15 through week 18, just because it's 4-week sample size. RB2, RB7, RB2, and RB1. 6 touchdowns being scored across those 4 weeks on the ground. Another 2 in the air. So he averaged 2 touchdowns per week. Your argument about having David Montgomery there, fully valid, 100%. You won't have to spend the 101 or the highest pick that you have on Jahmyr Gibbs. I don't think. I think he's going to be drafted around 3 to 5. But we haven't seen Jahmyr Gibbs' ceiling. So he was low in the. He only had 1. Or no, I think he had. I'll have to check that again. What was it? No, he had 4. Excuse me, but 4 on 52 receptions. I think there's more meat on the bone here, even if he's not going to see 25 to 35 touches a game like CMC or Saquon Barkley or I guess those might be the only, or Bijan Robinson are going to next year. But the ceiling is there. I can see it. I can see the promise, and I don't think it's going to cost you as much as that high of a pick.
Yeah, the reason I said that is because on Underdog, Draft Sharks ADP had him as the RB1. So that's why I was saying I don't think that, and I think going into next year, because everyone's going to, you remember the guys that helped you win championships. I sweated out week 18 with a guy who was in position to win his fantasy championship and then lost it because Jahmyr Gibbs. And to your point, I was incorrect. Jahmyr Gibbs is currently the RB3 in early best ball ADP per Draft Sharks. So I stand corrected there. At RB3, yeah, there's no other pick for me. It's not even close. So yeah, I sweated out on Twitter with a guy. He lost his fantasy championship due to Jahmyr Gibbs busting that last 30-yard run. So I think that that's going to be burning in people's brains, and people are going, if anything, there's any sort of trepidation with David Montgomery, then he immediately would jump to RB2 or even RB1. Saquon, for reference, is the 1-2 currently. He's the RB1 overall in ADP, but followed by Bijan and Jahmyr Gibbs. So yeah, at RB3, count me in. There's no greater. He was RB5 on the year prior to David Montgomery's injury, and then he immediately jumps to RB1, and it's just he's in a tier with a ceiling that's nearly unlimited. Unlimited.
What I'm going to do this season is make a list of guys, because I think this is the largest crop of running backs that have the potential to finish at running back. When we start off with Devon Achane, we think there's ceiling left still for, or you think there's ceiling left still for Derrick Henry. I don't think he's ever going to go RB1, but Bijan Robinson, Saquon Barkley, Jahmyr Gibbs, all those guys have a possibility, or it's within their range of outcomes to finish there. And I think Devon Achane is going to be at the turn, if not in the second. So I would have to go back and look at his ADP, but I might employ the strategy of just taking the last one that I think is going to have that kind of upside. But I mean, these guys, they crushed it. 2 questions here. First, what is the most ideal landing spot for a running back? Is it the Chargers or is it the Cowboys? Okay. All right. So hold on. Follow up. Well, hold on. This is more about the next question.
Me. I mean,
Ashton Jeanty gets drafted to the Chargers. Does he slot in anywhere in this top 5 for you?
I would take him if he goes to the Chargers. I would take him above Devon Achane.
Okay. And my second question here: what are we doing with Christian McCaffrey?
I mean, looking at the ADP on Underdog right now, he's pick 15. 2-3. I'm comfortable there, I guess. I would probably just bypass him and pick a Josh Jacobs or a Jonathan Taylor. I mean, oh wow, Bucky has changed his name to Marquise Irving. Interesting. I mean,
Interesting.
yeah. So, anywho, I think that I would probably just take Jonathan Taylor or Josh Jacobs, split that amongst my Underdog drafts and call it a day. I would have to get more of a discount. I would take Christian McCaffrey over Bucky, but I would bump up Jonathan Taylor and Josh Jacobs over Christian McCaffrey if I were forced to make that decision right now.
Okay. All right, and with that, we have reviewed the top 24 running backs. The top 5 were on this episode. The other 19 are on our previous 2 episodes with the title of Running Back Review. We are done. We can get out of here. So, thank you all very much for listening, liking, rating, downloading, subscribing, reviewing, all that fun stuff. We are on socials as 2 Guys 1 Pod FF on Instagram, Blue Sky, TikTok, and Twitter, X, formerly known as Twitter, excuse me. And also, we are on the Fantasy Sports Advice Network. I am Brick316, and he is Chev90. Thank you all for listening. Have a great night.
I would like to leave you with this thought from pugilist specialist Mike Tyson. Everybody's got a plan until that 0 RB gets punched in the mouth.
Step into the world of power, loyalty, and luck.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
With family, cannolis, and spins mean everything.
Now, you wanna get mixed up in the family business.
Introducing The Godfather at ChumbaCasino.com. Test your luck in the shadowy world of The Godfather slot.
Someday, I will call upon you to do a service for me.
Play The Godfather now at ChumbaCasino.com.
Welcome to the family.